Min-jun woke up to the sound of his mother's alarm clock ringing in the next room. It was 6 in the morning, just like every other day. He stretched his arms slowly, feeling the familiar stiffness in his left side. His left arm did not move as easily as his right arm. His left leg was the same way. This had been his life since he was born 15 years ago. The doctors told his mother that Min-jun had cerebral palsy. It was a condition that made his muscles tight and hard to control on one side of his body. Walking was difficult. He moved with a limp, dragging his left foot slightly with each step. Using his left hand for anything was nearly impossible. But Min-jun had learned to do almost everything with just his right hand and his determination. His mother, Soo-yeon, appeared in his doorway. She was already dressed in her nurse uniform, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Dark circles sat under her eyes. She had worked the late shift at the hospital last night and would work another shift this afternoon. Money was always tight in their small apartment. "Good morning, my strong boy," she said with a tired smile. "Do you need help getting ready?" Min-jun shook his head. "I can do it, Mom. You should rest before work." His mother's smile grew wider. She was proud of how independent he had become. When Min-jun was younger, everything had been a struggle. Getting dressed took an hour. Eating breakfast was messy and frustrating. But over the years, Min-jun had found his own ways of doing things. He used his teeth to help button his shirt. He tucked his left arm into his sleeve first, then used his right hand to pull everything into place. By 7 o'clock, Min-jun was ready for school. He wore his uniform, a simple white shirt and dark pants. His backpack hung from his right shoulder, because his left shoulder could not hold weight well. His mother had already left for work, leaving him a small breakfast of rice and soup on the table. The walk to school took 30 minutes. Other students could do it in 15, but Min-jun's pace was slower. He did not mind. He enjoyed the morning air and watching the city wake up around him. Seoul was always busy even in the early hours. Shop owners opened their stores. Office workers rushed to catch buses. Street vendors set up their carts, filling the air with the smell of fresh bread and hot coffee. At school, Min-jun was known as the boy who always smiled. His classmates had learned not to offer help unless he asked for it. In the beginning, when he first started at this school 3 years ago, everyone had tried to carry his books or open doors for him. Min-jun appreciated their kindness, but he explained that he needed to do things himself whenever possible. That was how he stayed strong. His best friend Ji-ho met him at the school gate. Ji-ho was tall and athletic. Everything Min-jun was not physically. But they had been friends since middle school, bonding over their love of comic books and their shared dream of making the world better. "Ready for the math test?" Ji-ho asked, falling into step beside Min-jun as they walked toward their classroom. Min-jun groaned. "I studied, but math is not my best subject." "At least you are good at everything else," Ji-ho said, "especially helping people. Are you going to the community center after school today?" "I have a doctor's appointment first," Min-jun explained. "But I will go to the center after that. Mrs. Kim said they need help organizing the donations that came in this week." The community center was Min-jun's favorite place in the whole city. He had started volunteering there 2 years ago, after his mother suggested he might enjoy it. The center provided free meals to elderly people and homeless individuals who had nowhere else to go. It also offered a warm place to sit, books to read, and people to talk with. At first, Mrs. Kim, the center director, had been unsure about accepting a disabled volunteer. She worried that the work would be too hard for Min-jun, but he had proven himself quickly. He could not carry heavy pots or move furniture, but he could set tables with his good hand. He could sit with the elderly visitors and listen to their stories. He could sort through donated clothes and fold them neatly. He could make phone calls to ask local businesses for donations. Within 6 months, Min-jun had become one of the center's most valuable volunteers. He came 4 days a week after school and all day on Saturdays. The elderly people loved him because he never seemed rushed or impatient. The homeless visitors appreciated that he treated them with respect, never looking down on them despite their circumstances. Mrs. Kim often said that Min-jun had the biggest heart of anyone she knew. He had even started a small project of his own, collecting books from his school to create a library corner at the center. Now visitors could borrow books and return them whenever they finished reading. The school day passed slowly. Min-jun struggled through his math test, did well in his literature class, and enjoyed his history lesson about ancient Korea. During lunch, he sat with Jiho and their other friends, laughing at jokes and discussing the latest superhero movie. When the final bell rang at 3 o'clock, most students rushed out excitedly. It was Friday, which meant the weekend was starting. But Minjun had his doctor's appointment. These appointments happened every 3 months. The doctor would check his muscle tightness, ask about pain, and sometimes adjust his medication or physical therapy routine. Minjun said goodbye to Jiho and began the walk to the doctor's office. Instead of taking the bus, which was crowded and difficult for him to navigate, he preferred to walk. The doctor's office was in Gangnam, one of the busiest districts in Seoul. Tall buildings reached toward the sky. Expensive cars filled the streets. People in business suits walked quickly, their faces focused on their phones. As Minjun walked, he thought about his future. He was in his first year of high school now. Soon he would need to think seriously about university. His dream was to study social work. He wanted to help people professionally, maybe even start his own organization someday that helped disabled people find jobs and feel valued by society. But university was expensive. His mother worked so hard already, and Minjun knew that his medical expenses added extra pressure to their finances. He had started looking into scholarships, but competition was fierce. Thousands of students applied for the same limited funds. Still, Minjun refused to give up hope. His mother had taught him that lesson from a very young age. When he was 7 and crying because he could not run like the other children, she had held him close and said, "You cannot control what your body can do, but you can control how big your heart is. A person with a big heart can change the world even if they cannot run fast." Those words had stayed with him. They pushed him forward when things got difficult. They reminded him that his worth was not measured by what his legs could do or how strong his left arm was. The streets grew more crowded as Minjun entered the heart of Gangnam. Car horns honked constantly. Music blasted from store speakers. People shouted into their phones. It was overwhelming sometimes, but Minjun had learned to find peace even in chaos. His appointment was at 4 o'clock, and he was running a few minutes late because of his slower walking speed. He began to move a bit faster, ignoring the ache that started in his hip when he pushed too hard. The doctor's office was just a few more blocks away. As he approached a busy intersection, Minjun noticed the crowd of people waiting for the light to change. Everyone looked impatient, shifting their weight from foot to foot, checking their watches. This was one of the most dangerous intersections in the area. Cars raced through the moment the light changed. Motorcycles weaved between vehicles. Pedestrians had to be careful and quick. Minjun positioned himself near the edge of the sidewalk, preparing to cross when the signal changed. He took a deep breath, gathering his energy for the quick crossing ahead. The light turned green and the crowd surged forward. That was when Minjun saw him, an old man standing perfectly still while everyone else rushed past. The man wore dark sunglasses and held a white cane in his trembling hand. He was blind and he was lost. The pedestrian signal showed a green walking figure, but the old man with the white cane did not move. His head turned slowly from left to right, and Minjun could see confusion on his wrinkled face. The man's cane tapped nervously against the sidewalk as cars roared past just a few feet away. Around him, dozens of people rushed across the street. Business people in suits checked their phones while walking. Teenage girls chatted and laughed together. A mother dragged 2 small children by their hands. Everyone moved forward like water flowing around a rock. They simply went around the blind man without stopping. A few people glanced back at him. Their faces showed brief concern, but they kept walking. Everyone in Seoul was always in a hurry. Everyone had somewhere important to be. Stopping to help would make them late. Minjun stood at the edge of the sidewalk, watching the scene unfold. The crossing signal was already counting down. 20 seconds left. 15 seconds. The blind man still had not moved. He seemed frozen, afraid to step forward into what he could only hear as chaos. Then something dangerous happened. A delivery motorcycle suddenly jumped up onto the sidewalk, trying to cut around the traffic jam at the intersection. The driver was young, wearing a helmet with food delivery stickers on it. He was going too fast and came within inches of hitting the blind man. The old man jerked backward, nearly falling. His white cane clattered to the ground. The motorcycle driver did not even stop. He just shouted something and kept going, disappearing into the crowd on the other side of the street. That was when Min-jun made his decision. His doctor's appointment did not matter right now. This man needed help immediately. Min-jun walked forward as quickly as his limp would allow. His left leg dragged slightly with each step, and his left arm hung uselessly at his side. But his right side was strong, and his determination was stronger. He reached the blind man just as the crossing signal turned red again. "Excuse me, sir," Min-jun said gently. He did not want to startle the man. "Are you okay? Can I help you?" The old man's head turned toward the sound of Min-jun's voice. His face, which had been tight with stress and fear, relaxed slightly. He must have been around 70 years old with deep wrinkles around his eyes and mouth. His gray hair was neatly combed and he wore a nice suit, though it was a bit old-fashioned. The dark sunglasses hid his eyes completely. "Oh, thank goodness," the man said. His voice shook a little. "Yes, please. I need to cross the street, but I cannot tell when it is safe. Everything sounds so loud and confusing." Min-jun bent down carefully, trying to keep his balance, and picked up the man's white cane. He placed it back in the man's hand. "I understand. This intersection is very busy and dangerous. Even people who can see find it difficult. My name is Min-jun. I will help you cross safely." The old man's grateful smile made deep lines in his face. "Thank you so much, young man. My name is Mr. Park. I'm trying to reach an office building somewhere near here, but I got completely lost. The construction on my usual route confused me." "No problem, Mr. Park," Min-jun said warmly. "Let me help you. When the light changes, I will guide you across. Just hold on to my right arm and walk at whatever speed is comfortable. We do not need to hurry." Mr. Park reached out with his left hand, finding Min-jun's right arm. His grip was gentle but firm. The old man's hand felt thin and bony, and Min-jun could feel it trembling slightly. They waited together for the signal to change. Cars continued rushing past in both directions. The noise was incredible. Engines roared, horns honked, brakes squealed. Music from nearby stores mixed with the sound of hundreds of conversations happening at once. For Mr. Park, who had to navigate this world without seeing it, the chaos must have been terrifying. "Have you been blind for a long time?" Min-jun asked. He hoped the question was not rude. His mother had taught him that asking honest questions was better than pretending not to notice things about people. 5 years, Mr. Park replied. His voice carried sadness. "I lost my sight to diabetes. It happened slowly at first, then all at once. One day I could see a little bit. The next day everything was gone. I have been learning to live this way, but some days are harder than others." "I understand," Min-jun said. "Not the same way, of course. But I understand that living with a disability is a daily challenge. I was born with cerebral palsy. My left side does not work well. Walking is hard for me too." Mr. Park turned his head toward Min-jun, surprise showing on his face. "You have a disability? And yet you stopped to help me?" "Of course," Min-jun said simply. "Everyone needs help sometimes. What matters is that we help each other when we can." The light changed. The green walking figure appeared on the signal across the street. The beeping sound for blind pedestrians began its steady rhythm. This was their chance. "Okay, Mr. Park," Min-jun said. "We are going to cross now. Just stay with me. I will tell you if we need to stop." They stepped off the curb together. Min-jun moved slowly and steadily. His limp was more noticeable than usual because he was concentrating so hard on keeping them both safe. His left foot dragged, and every few steps he had to adjust his balance. But his right arm stayed strong and steady for Mr. Park to hold on to. The crosswalk was wide, and it seemed to take forever to get across. Other pedestrians flowed around them quickly, clearly impatient with their slow pace. Someone muttered something about people blocking the way. Min-jun ignored them. Halfway across, the signal began flashing. They were running out of time. A car at the front of the stopped traffic revved its engine, eager to go the moment the light changed. The driver honked his horn twice, long and loud. Min-jun felt his heart beat faster, but he did not speed up. Going faster would be dangerous. He might lose his balance, and Mr. Park might trip. They had to maintain their steady pace even if the light turned red. "We are okay," Min-jun said, both to reassure Mr. Park and himself. "Just a little bit further." The light turned yellow just as they reached the middle of the crosswalk. The car that had honked revved its engine again. Min-jun raised his right hand slightly, still supporting Mr. Park, making a gesture for the driver to wait. They only needed 10 more seconds. Finally, their feet touched the far sidewalk. They had made it safely across. Min-jun let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Behind them, the light turned red and traffic began moving again, cars racing past where they had just been standing. "Thank you," Mr. Park said. His voice was thick with emotion. "I was so frightened standing there. People just kept walking past me. I felt invisible. But you stopped. You helped me even though you have your own difficulties." "It was nothing," Min-jun said, though he felt pleased by the gratitude. "Where are you trying to go? I can walk with you to make sure you get there safely." Mr. Park explained that he was supposed to meet his son at an office building somewhere in this area. He had the address written on a card in his pocket but could not read it himself. Min-jun asked him to take it out, and Mr. Park produced a business card with shaking fingers. Min-jun read the address. He knew exactly where it was because he had walked past that building many times. It was about 3 blocks away, but those blocks would require crossing 2 more busy streets and navigating through crowded sidewalks. "I know where that is," Min-jun said, "but it is not very close and the route is complicated. If you do not mind, I will walk with you all the way there. I have a doctor's appointment, but I can be a little bit late." "I cannot ask you to do that," Mr. Park protested, though his voice held hope. "You have already done so much and you said you have an appointment." "I want to do it," Min-jun insisted. "Really, my doctor will understand. And honestly, walking with you is more important than being on time. Some things matter more than punctuality." Mr. Park's grateful smile returned. "You are a very special young man. What did you say your name was?" "Min-jun. My name is Kim Min-jun." "Well, Min-jun, I accept your kind offer, and I hope you will let me buy you a snack or something as thanks." "That is not necessary," Min-jun said. "But we can talk while we walk. That will be payment enough." They began moving slowly through the crowded Gangnam sidewalk. Min-jun guided Mr. Park carefully around other pedestrians, warning him when there were steps or obstacles. His own limp made the journey slower, but neither of them seemed to mind. They had time, and the conversation between them began to flow as naturally as water. "Tell me about yourself, Min-jun," Mr. Park said. "What do you do when you are not rescuing blind old men at intersections?" Min-jun laughed. "I am just a high school student. I go to school, study, and I volunteer at a community center 4 days a week." "A volunteer?" Mr. Park sounded impressed. "That is wonderful. What kind of work do you do there?" As they walked together through the busy Gangnam streets, Min-jun told Mr. Park about the community center. He explained how it provided free meals to over 100 people every day, how it offered a warm place for homeless people to rest, and how elderly visitors came there to avoid being lonely in their small apartments. "I help set tables with my good hand," Min-jun explained. "I also talk with the visitors, especially the elderly ones. Many of them just want someone to listen to their stories. I organized a small library corner too, collecting books from my school. It is not much, but it gives people something to do while they wait for meals." Mr. Park listened carefully as they walked. He asked questions about the center, about the people who came there, and about how it was funded. Min-jun explained that the center ran on donations and struggled constantly to pay for food and keep the building heated in winter. "We have a good director, Mrs. Kim," Min-jun said. "She works so hard to keep everything running. But it is difficult. Sometimes we run out of rice before the end of the month. Sometimes we cannot afford meat for the meals, but we manage somehow." They reached another intersection, smaller than the first but still busy. Min-jun waited for the light, then guided Mr. Park across carefully. A bicycle came too close, and Min-jun had to quickly pull them both back. His left leg buckled slightly from the sudden movement, but he caught his balance. "Are you all right?" Mr. Park asked, feeling Min-jun's body shift. "I am fine," Min-jun assured him. "Just my leg being difficult. It happens sometimes." Once they were safely across, they continued walking. The sidewalk here was less crowded, which made the journey easier. Store windows displayed expensive clothes and jewelry. Luxury cars were parked along the street. This part of Seoul was where wealthy people lived and worked. "Tell me about your cerebral palsy," Mr. Park said gently. "How does it affect your daily life?" Min-jun appreciated that Mr. Park asked directly instead of dancing around the subject. Too many people were uncomfortable talking about disabilities. They pretended not to notice or spoke in hushed, pitying voices that made Min-jun feel like something was wrong with him. "I was born with it," Min-jun explained. My left side is affected the most. My left arm barely works at all. I cannot lift it very high or grip things with my left hand. My left leg is stiff and weak, which is why I walk with a limp. It used to be worse when I was younger. Physical therapy has helped a lot. It must be frustrating, Mr. Park said. Sometimes, Minjun admitted, especially when I was younger. I used to cry because I could not run and play like other children. I could not ride a bicycle. I could not play sports. But my mother taught me to focus on what I can do instead of what I cannot do. She said that everyone has limitations, mine just happened to be more visible. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She is, Minjun said, his voice full of love. She is a nurse and works very hard. She raised me by herself. My father left when I was a baby, after he found out about my condition. I think it was too much for him to handle. But my mother never complained. She just worked harder and loved me more. They walked past a fancy coffee shop where people sat outside despite the cool autumn air. The smell of expensive coffee filled the air. A group of young business people sat at one table, laughing and talking loudly about their jobs and their plans for the weekend. And what about your dreams? Mr. Park asked. What do you want to do with your future? Minjun felt comfortable sharing his hopes with this kind stranger. There was something about Mr. Park that made him easy to talk to. Maybe it was because Mr. Park really listened, not just waited for his turn to speak like many people did. I want to study social work at university, Minjun said. I want to help people professionally. Maybe someday I can start my own organization that helps people with disabilities find jobs and feel valued. Many disabled people are very capable, but employers do not give them chances. They assume we cannot do things. That is a beautiful dream, Mr. Park said. Will you be able to afford university? Minjun's steps slowed slightly. This was the hard part. I am not sure. University is expensive and my mother already works so hard. My medical care costs money too for physical therapy and doctor visits. I am looking for scholarships, but there are so many students competing for them. I have good grades, but maybe not good enough. Do not give up, Mr. Park said firmly. Someone with your determination and heart will find a way. I believe that. They turned a corner and Minjun recognized a landmark he knew. The office building where Mr. Park needed to go was just one more block away. Their time together was almost over, and Minjun found himself feeling sad about it. This conversation had been meaningful in a way he had not expected. Can I ask you something personal? Minjun said hesitantly. Of course. How do you stay positive? Losing your sight must have been terrible, but you seem like you have a good attitude about it. Mr. Park was quiet for a long moment. His grip on Minjun's arm tightened slightly, and his face showed pain that had nothing to do with physical injury. Honestly, Mr. Park finally said, I do not always stay positive. Some days are very dark for me, even darker than the world I can no longer see. I feel useless. I feel like a burden to my family. Before I lost my sight, I was an executive at a big company. I made important decisions. People listened to me. Now I cannot even cross a street by myself. His voice cracked with emotion. Today was supposed to be a good day. I insisted on traveling alone to meet my son because I wanted to prove I could still be independent. But I got lost because of construction that changed my usual route. When I stood at that intersection, unable to see and unable to move forward, I felt more helpless than I have felt in years. And then people just kept walking past me. Not one person stopped. Until you did. Minjun felt his throat tighten. He understood that feeling of being invisible, of being passed by while others went about their busy lives. He had experienced it too in different ways. I am glad I was there, Minjun said softly. And for what it is worth, I do not think you are useless at all. You have wisdom and experience. You can still do many things, maybe just different things than before. That is what my son always tells me, Mr. Park said with a sad smile. But it is hard to believe it. Today, though, meeting you, it helped. You have your own challenges, probably harder than mine, and yet you stopped to help an old man. You volunteer to help others. You have dreams and plans. You reminded me that value does not come from what our bodies can do. It comes from who we are inside. They had reached the office building. It was a tall glass structure that reflected the late afternoon sun. A security guard stood near the entrance. Business people came and went through the revolving doors. This is it, Minjun said. This is the building you needed to reach. Mr. Park stopped walking. He turned his body toward Minjun even though he could not see him. Kim Minjun, you said? Yes, sir. And the community center where you volunteer, what is it called? The Hope Community Center. It is in Seodaemun District. Hope Community Center, Mr. Park repeated as if memorizing it. Minjun, I want you to know that what you did today mattered more than you know. Not just helping me cross the street, but this entire conversation. You have reminded me of things I had forgotten. You have given me something to think about. I am just happy I could help, Minjun said honestly. Will you be okay from here? Should I take you inside? No, Mr. Park said, waving his hand. I will be fine now. My son is expecting me, and the security guard will help me find the right elevator. But Minjun, before you go, may I give you some advice? Of course, Mr. Park took a deep breath. Do not let anyone tell you that your disability defines what you can achieve. Do not let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big. You have something special inside you. A kind of light that many people never develop. That light will carry you farther than any pair of working legs ever could. Promise me you will not give up on university. Promise me you will keep helping others. Promise me you will keep being exactly who you are. Minjun felt tears forming in his eyes. No stranger had ever spoken to him this way. No one outside his mother had seen him so clearly. I promise, Minjun said, his voice thick with emotion. Mr. Park reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. He took out a business card and handed it to Minjun. This has my phone number on it. I cannot see it to check if it is the right card, but I think it is. If you ever need anything at all, please call me. I mean it. Minjun took the card. It was simple white cardstock with raised letters he could feel with his fingers. The name on it said Park Sang-woo with a phone number below. Thank you, Mr. Park, Minjun said. I will keep this safe. And please, Mr. Park said, tell me your phone number too. I want to stay in touch. Minjun recited his phone number and Mr. Park carefully typed it into his phone, which had a voice assistant to help him navigate the screen. They said their goodbyes and Minjun watched as the security guard came over to help Mr. Park enter the building. As Minjun turned to leave, he looked down at the business card in his hand. He read it more carefully now. Under Mr. Park's name it said, Former Chief Operating Officer, Park Industries. There was no current title suggesting that Mr. Park had retired or left his position, probably after losing his sight. 2 weeks passed quickly. Minjun fell back into his normal routine of school, physical therapy appointments, and volunteering at the Hope Community Center. The encounter with Mr. Park became a pleasant memory, something he thought about occasionally but did not dwell on. He had not called the phone number on the business card and Mr. Park had not called him either. That was fine. It had been a meaningful moment shared between two strangers and that was enough. The autumn weather grew colder. Minjun wore a heavier jacket now, which made walking a bit harder because of the extra weight on his shoulders. But he did not complain. At the community center, they were preparing for winter, which was always the hardest season. More homeless people would come seeking warmth. More elderly people would arrive because heating their apartments was too expensive. The center would need more food, more blankets, more of everything. On a Thursday morning, Minjun arrived at school to find his friend Jiho waiting for him at the gate. Jiho's face showed excitement about something. Did you hear the news about the Hope Community Center? Jiho asked immediately. Minjun shook his head. What news? I was there yesterday afternoon and everything seemed normal. Check your phone. Mrs. Kim sent a message to all the volunteers late last night. Minjun pulled out his phone and opened his messages. There was indeed a text from Mrs. Kim, sent at 11 o'clock the previous night. It said, emergency meeting for all volunteers and staff tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Very important news. Please come if possible. What do you think happened? Minjun asked, feeling worried. Emergency meetings usually meant bad news. Maybe they were running out of money. Maybe they had to close the center. His heart sank at the thought. I do not know, Jiho said. But Mrs. Kim sounded excited in her message, not upset. Maybe it is good news. Minjun hoped so, but he tried not to get his hopes up too high. Good news was rare for small community centers that struggled every day to keep their doors open. That evening, Minjun told his mother about the meeting. She had just come home from a double shift at the hospital and looked exhausted. But when Minjun mentioned the emergency meeting, concern crossed her tired face. I hope everything is all right, she said. That center means so much to you. And they do such good work for the community. I will find out tomorrow, Minjun said. Try not to worry, Mom, you should rest. The next morning, Minjun woke up early. The meeting was at 9, which meant he would miss his first 2 classes at school. He sent a message to his teacher explaining the situation. Then he got ready as quickly as he could and headed to the community center. When he arrived at 8:55, he found the main room already full of people. All 15 regular volunteers were there, along with the 5 staff members who worked at the center. Everyone was talking quietly among themselves, speculating about the mysterious meeting. Mrs. Kim stood at the front of the room. She was a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and kind eyes that always seemed to notice when someone was struggling. She had run the Hope Community Center for 20 years, somehow keeping it alive through countless financial crises and challenges. But this morning, Mrs. Kim looked different. Her face was pale, almost white. Her hands shook as she held a piece of paper. At first, Min-jun thought she was upset. Then he realized she was not upset at all. She was overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you all for coming," Mrs. Kim said when everyone had settled down. Her voice trembled. "I asked you here because something has happened. Something I still cannot quite believe." The room went silent. Everyone leaned forward, waiting. Mrs. Kim took a deep breath. "Yesterday afternoon, I received a notification from our bank. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But I called the bank to confirm, and it is real. Someone, an anonymous donor, has transferred 50 million won into our account." Gasps filled the room. 50 million won was approximately $40,000. For a small community center that usually had less than 1 million won in the bank at any given time, this was an unimaginable amount of money. "Who was it?" someone asked. "Who donated so much?" "I do not know," Mrs. Kim said. Her eyes were wet with tears now. The donation was completely anonymous, but it came with a note. She held up the paper she had been holding. The note says the money must be used for 3 specific things. First, to expand our meal services so we can serve more people. Second, to upgrade our kitchen facilities so we can prepare food more efficiently. And third, to create a scholarship fund for volunteers who want to study social work or related fields in university. Min-jun felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. A scholarship fund? For volunteers who wanted to study social work? That description fit him exactly. Around him, the other volunteers erupted in excited conversation. People hugged each other. Some cried. Mrs. Kim had to raise her hands to get everyone to quiet down. "There is more," she said. The note also said this is just the beginning. If we use this money wisely and continue our good work, more donations will come. But we must never know who the donor is. They want to remain completely anonymous. "Why?" someone asked. "Why would someone give so much but not want any recognition?" Mrs. Kim smiled through her tears. "I think because they understand that this work is not about recognition. It is about helping people. Real generosity does not need applause." The meeting continued for another hour, as Mrs. Kim outlined plans for how to use the money, but Min-jun barely heard any of it. His mind was spinning. Who could have done this? Who even knew about their small community center? They were not famous. They did not have wealthy donors or powerful connections. After the meeting ended, Min-jun walked home slowly, his mind full of questions. He thought about the timing. The donation had come just 2 weeks after his encounter with Mr. Park. But that was just a coincidence, surely. Mr. Park was a retired executive who had lost his sight. He was probably living on a pension or savings. He would not have this kind of money to give away. Then again, Min-jun remembered the business card. Former Chief Operating Officer, Park Industries. What if Park Industries was bigger than Min-jun had realized? What if Mr. Park's family was wealthy? But no, Min-jun pushed the thought away. It was impossible. Mr. Park was just a kind old man who had needed help crossing a street. He had taken Min-jun's phone number out of politeness, not because he planned to track down his volunteer work and make a huge donation. Still, the coincidence bothered him. The scholarship fund for social work students. The note saying this was about helping people, not recognition. The anonymous nature of the donation. Everything seemed to point to someone who had heard Min-jun's story and been moved by it. 3 days passed. The excitement at the community center continued. Mrs. Kim had already started getting quotes from contractors about upgrading the kitchen. She had also begun working with a local university to establish the scholarship fund formally. Everything was moving forward quickly. On Monday afternoon, while Min-jun was at the center helping set up for the evening meal service, Mrs. Kim called him into her small office. Her face looked strange, a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Min-jun," she said slowly, Something odd just happened. A man came to the center asking specifically for you. He said his name is Secretary Cho and that he works for someone called James Park. Do you know anyone by that name? Min-jun's heart started beating faster. James Park. Could that be related to Mr. Park, the blind man he had helped? Park was a common last name in Korea, but the timing was too strange to be coincidence. I do not know anyone named James Park, Min-jun said honestly, but I met an older man named Park Sang-woo about 2 weeks ago. I helped him cross a busy street and walked him to an office building. He told me his son works in business. Mrs. Kim's eyes widened. Park Sang-woo? As in the Park family? Min-jun, do you have any idea who the Park family is? Min-jun shook his head. Should I? Park Industries is one of the largest companies in South Korea. Mrs. Kim explained, her voice rising with excitement. They own technology companies, real estate, manufacturing plants. They employ thousands of people. James Park is the CEO, one of the richest men in the country, and you helped his father cross the street? The room seemed to spin around Min-jun. One of the richest men in the country? He had walked with Mr. Park for 3 blocks, talking casually about life and dreams and disability. He had no idea he was speaking with someone from such a powerful family. Secretary Cho is waiting outside, Mrs. Kim said. He wants to speak with you. Should I send him in? Min-jun nodded, too shocked to speak. A moment later, a man in an expensive dark suit entered the office. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with neat hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He bowed politely to both Mrs. Kim and Min-jun. Kim Min-jun? He asked. Yes, that is me, Min-jun managed to say. Secretary Cho smiled warmly. I am so pleased to meet you. Mr. James Park has been looking for you. His father told him about meeting you 2 weeks ago, and Mr. Park has been very eager to speak with you. May I sit down? I have quite a story to tell you. Min-jun and Mrs. Kim both sat down, though Min-jun's legs felt shaky. His left leg was acting up from standing too long anyway, but now it trembled from nervousness too. Secretary Cho folded his hands on the desk. Let me start by explaining why I am here. 2 weeks ago you helped Mr. Park Sang-woo, correct? You found him confused at a busy intersection and guided him to his son's office building? Yes, Min-jun said. But I did not know who he was. He was just an older man who needed help. Exactly, Secretary Cho said, his smile growing wider. And that is precisely what made your actions so meaningful. Secretary Cho opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. His movements were precise and professional, but his eyes held genuine warmth as he looked at Min-jun. Before I explain everything, Secretary Cho said, I need to tell you more about Mr. Park Sang-woo. You see, losing his sight 5 years ago was devastating for him, not just because of the physical loss, but because of what it meant for his identity. Min-jun listened carefully. Mrs. Kim sat quietly beside him, her hands folded in her lap. Mr. Park Sang-woo was not just any executive, Secretary Cho continued. He was one of the most respected business leaders in South Korea. He built Park Industries from a small manufacturing company into one of the largest corporations in the country. He worked 16-hour days. He made decisions that affected thousands of employees. He was powerful, respected, and absolutely driven. Secretary Cho paused, his expression becoming sadder. Then diabetes took his sight. It happened over the course of about 6 months. First, his vision became blurry. Then he could only see shadows. Then nothing at all. Just darkness. Min-jun felt his chest tighten. He understood something about losing abilities you once had, though his situation was different. He had been born with his disability, but losing something you once possessed must be even harder in some ways. Mr. Park fell into a deep depression, Secretary Cho said quietly. He retired from the company immediately. He refused to leave his house for months. His family tried everything to help him, but he had given up. He said he felt useless, like a burden. His whole life had been about being strong and capable and in control. Suddenly, he could not even navigate his own neighborhood without help. That is terrible, Min-jun whispered. His son, James Park, was heartbroken watching his father suffer, Secretary Cho continued. James tried to involve his father in the company, asking for advice and guidance. But Mr. Park said his time was over. He said he had nothing left to contribute. For 5 years, he has been living in this state of sadness and isolation. Secretary Cho leaned forward. Then 2 weeks ago, something changed. James was in his office when his father arrived for their monthly lunch meeting. Usually his father came by car with a driver and assistant. But that day, Mr. Park had insisted on using public transportation and walking to prove he could be independent. When he got lost and disoriented at that intersection, he nearly gave up and called for help. He felt defeated and foolish. But then you appeared, Secretary Cho said, looking directly at Minjun. You, a teenage boy with your own physical disability, stopped to help him. You did not rush him. You did not treat him like he was helpless or pathetic. You walked with him for 3 blocks and talked to him like he was a normal person. Minjun felt embarrassed. I just did what anyone should do. But no one else did, Secretary Cho said firmly. Dozens of people walked past Mr. Park. They saw him struggling and kept going. You were the only one who stopped. And more importantly, you shared your story with him. You told him about your cerebral palsy, about your volunteer work, about your dreams of studying social work. You showed him that having a disability does not mean life is over. Secretary Cho's voice became emotional. When Mr. Park arrived at James's office that day, he was transformed. For the first time in 5 years, he was smiling. Really smiling. He told James everything about meeting you. He talked about your kindness, your determination, your positive attitude despite your own challenges. He said you reminded him that value comes from who you are inside, not what your body can do. Tears formed in Minjun's eyes. He remembered that conversation, but he had no idea it had affected Mr. Park so deeply. James told me he started crying while his father talked, Secretary Cho said. It was the first time in years that his father seemed like his old self, full of life and hope. Mr. Park kept saying that if a teenage boy with cerebral palsy could volunteer to help others and dream of making the world better, then surely he, with all his experience and resources, could find purpose again. Mrs. Kim was crying now too. Minjun handed her a tissue from the box on her desk. That evening, James made the donation to your community center, Secretary Cho said. 50 million won was just a starting amount. When Mr. Park told him about your volunteer work here, about how you help feed over 100 people every day despite your limited resources, James wanted to help immediately. The scholarship fund was his father's idea. Mr. Park insisted that any young person with your dedication to helping others deserves support for their education. Minjun could barely breathe. The anonymous donation had come from the Park family. Because of one afternoon, one simple act of kindness, one honest conversation. But there is more, Secretary Cho said. He opened the folder and pulled out an elegant envelope. Mr. James Park and his father want to do more than just make a one-time donation. They want to honor what you represent and what you have shown them. He handed the envelope to Minjun. Minjun's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a formal letter on expensive paper. At the top was the Park Industries logo. Minjun began reading, though the words blurred through his tears. The letter was from James Park himself. It thanked Minjun for helping his father, and for reminding the Park family about what truly matters in life. Then it detailed an offer that seemed impossible. First, a full scholarship to any university in South Korea. Not just tuition, but everything. Books, living expenses, medical care, transportation. Everything Minjun would need for 4 years of study. The letter specified that the scholarship had no requirements except that Minjun continue to be himself and pursue his dream of helping others. Second, a monthly stipend for Minjun's mother, so she would not have to work such long hours and could spend more time with her son during his final years at home. Third, and most surprisingly, an offer to establish a foundation in Minjun's name. The Park family wanted to create the Kim Minjun Foundation for Disabled Community Service. It would provide grants to people with disabilities who wanted to start their own charitable projects or social enterprises. It would also support existing programs that employed or served people with disabilities. Minjun read the letter 3 times before he could accept that it was real. His hands trembled so badly that Mrs. Kim had to take the letter from him and read it aloud herself to confirm what it said. This cannot be real, Minjun whispered. I just helped an old man cross the street. I did not do anything special. But that is exactly the point, Secretary Cho said gently. You did something simple that anyone could have done, but no one else did. And you did it while dealing with your own struggles. You showed compassion, patience, and genuine kindness without expecting anything in return. That is special. That is exactly what this world needs more of. Mrs. Kim was openly crying now. She reached over and squeezed Minjun's hand. You deserve this, Minjun. You deserve all of this and more. I do not know what to say, Minjun managed. His throat felt tight. His chest hurt from the overwhelming emotions flooding through him. "You do not need to say anything right now," Secretary Cho said kindly. "But Mr. Park, both father and son would very much like to meet with you. They want to discuss the foundation and hear your ideas. They also want to thank you in person. Would you be willing to meet with them?" Min-jun nodded, unable to speak. Secretary Cho pulled out his phone and checked his calendar. "Would this Saturday work for you? We can arrange transportation to pick you up. The meeting would be at the Park family home. It is quite far from here, so we would send a car." "Saturday is fine," Min-jun said, finding his voice again. "Wonderful," Secretary Cho said, standing up. He pulled out another envelope, this one smaller. "This is for your mother. It contains information about the monthly stipend and how it will be arranged. Please share all of this with her. I imagine she will want to be part of the Saturday meeting as well. We would be honored to have her there." After Secretary Cho left, Min-jun and Mrs. Kim sat in silence for a long moment. The office felt too small for the magnitude of what had just happened. Everything in Min-jun's life had just changed, completely and irrevocably. "I cannot accept all of this," Min-jun finally said. "It is too much. I just did what anyone should do." Mrs. Kim shook her head firmly. "No, you did what everyone should do, but most people do not. And more importantly, you cannot refuse this gift. Do you know why?" Min-jun looked at her questioningly. "Because refusing it would be selfish," Mrs. Kim said. "The Park family needs to give this to you. They need to do something good because you inspired them to. If you refuse, you take away their chance to honor what you taught them. You take away their opportunity to make a positive difference. Can you understand that?" Min-jun had never thought about it that way. He slowly nodded. "Besides," Mrs. Kim continued, her voice becoming more playful, "you are going to need that scholarship. Because I expect you to get a degree in social work, and then come back here and help me run this center when I am too old to do it anymore. And with the Kim Min-jun Foundation, you will be able to help so many other people who want to serve their communities despite their disabilities. This is not about you getting lucky. This is about you being given the tools to help even more people." Min-jun understood then. This was not about him receiving charity. This was about being given the means to do more good in the world. The Park family was not just rewarding him. They were investing in his dreams and his ability to help others. That evening, Min-jun walked home slowly. His left leg dragged more than usual because he was tired, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. When he arrived home, his mother was just waking up from a nap before her night shift. He handed her the envelope from Secretary Cho and tried to explain everything that had happened. Min-jun's mother, Soo-yeon, listened to the entire story without interrupting. She sat at their small kitchen table, still wearing her nurse uniform, while Min-jun explained everything. When he finished, she opened the envelope and read the letter about the monthly stipend. Then she read it again, and again. Finally, she looked up at her son. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "You really did this," she whispered. "You really helped someone so much that they want to change our lives. I just helped him cross the street." "Mom?" Min-jun said, feeling embarrassed by all the attention and praise. His mother stood up and walked around the table. She pulled Min-jun into a tight hug, something she had not done since he was small. "You have always been my miracle," she said. "From the day you were born, when doctors told me all the things you would never be able to do, I knew they were wrong. I knew you would do amazing things, but even I could not imagine this." They held each other for a long time. Soo-yeon cried tears that held 15 years of worry, exhaustion, and now overwhelming relief. The stipend meant she could cut back to just one job. She could be home more. She could see her son before he left for university. She could finally rest. Saturday arrived quickly. True to his word, Secretary Cho sent a car to pick up Min-jun and his mother. It was a sleek black vehicle with leather seats and a professional driver. Min-jun felt out of place in such luxury, but his mother squeezed his hand and smiled at him. The drive took over an hour. They left the crowded streets of Seoul and drove into an area of large estates surrounded by walls and gates. The car finally turned into a long driveway that led to a massive house that looked more like a palace than a home. "This is where they live?" Min-jun whispered to his mother. She looked just as overwhelmed as he felt. "I guess so." Secretary Cho met them at the door and welcomed them inside. The house was beautiful, but also felt warm and lived in. Family photos hung on the walls. Comfortable furniture filled the rooms. It was clearly a home where people lived and loved, not just a showpiece. They were led to a large sitting room with windows that overlooked a garden. 2 men waited there. One was younger, maybe in his late 40s, wearing casual but expensive clothes. The other was Mr. Park, the elderly blind man Min-jun had helped. He wore dark sunglasses and sat in a comfortable chair with his white cane resting beside him. "Min-jun," Mr. Park exclaimed when Secretary Cho announced their arrival. His face lit up with the biggest smile. "I would know your voice anywhere. Come sit near me." The younger man stepped forward and bowed deeply to both Min-jun and his mother. "I am James Park. Thank you so much for coming. And you must be Mrs. Kim, Min-jun's mother. It is an honor to meet the woman who raised such an exceptional young man." For the next 3 hours they talked. James and his father wanted to hear everything about Min-jun's life, his work at the community center, his dreams for the future. They asked Soo-yeon about her work as a nurse and what it had been like raising Min-jun alone. But mostly, they talked about the afternoon when Min-jun and Mr. Park had met. The elder Mr. Park described how lost and frightened he had felt, how invisible he had been to the rushing crowds, and how Min-jun's simple kindness had changed everything for him. "You gave me back my purpose," Mr. Park said, his voice full of emotion. "I had spent 5 years feeling sorry for myself, feeling useless. Then you showed me that helping others does not require perfect vision or perfect legs. It requires a perfect heart, which you have." James explained his own perspective. "My father called me that evening after your encounter. He talked for 2 hours, more than he had spoken in 5 years combined. He told me he wanted to volunteer somewhere, anywhere. He said if a disabled teenager could serve others, then he certainly could too. It was like having my real father back after losing him to depression and darkness." The conversation eventually turned to the foundation. James pulled out detailed plans that his staff had already begun developing. The Kim Min-jun Foundation would launch with significant funding. It would provide grants ranging from small amounts for local projects to large sums for major initiatives. The focus would be on supporting people with disabilities who wanted to serve their communities. "I want you to be involved in every decision," James said to Min-jun. "This is your foundation. Your name, your vision, your values. We will handle the business side and the money, but you will guide the mission. You will help decide who receives grants and what projects get supported." Min-jun felt overwhelmed but also excited. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. He could help so many people, create opportunities for others like himself who wanted to make a difference despite their physical limitations. "I have one request," Mr. Park said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "I want to volunteer at the Hope Community Center. I want to help with whatever tasks I can manage. I may not be able to see, but I can still talk to people. I can still listen to their stories. I can still make people feel less alone." Mrs. Kim spoke up for the first time. "We would be honored to have you volunteer with us. Mr. Park, the people who come to our center would benefit so much from your wisdom and experience." And so it was decided. Mr. Park would begin volunteering at the Hope Community Center 2 days a week. James would arrange for a driver to bring him there and pick him up. He would work alongside Min-jun, serving the same people Min-jun had been helping for the past 2 years. As the meeting drew to a close, James handed Min-jun an official document. It was the scholarship agreement, already prepared and ready to sign. It guaranteed full financial support for 4 years of university education at any school that accepted him. "There is no contract or obligation," James explained. "You do not owe us anything. We do not expect you to work for our company or promote our business. This scholarship is simply because you deserve it. Because you showed compassion when no one else did. Because you prove every day that disability does not define a person's worth." Min-jun signed the document with his shaking right hand. His mother cried again, holding her hands over her mouth. The news of the scholarship and the foundation spread quickly, first through the Hope Community Center, then through Min-jun's school, and eventually to local news organizations. A journalist contacted Min-jun asking to write a story about him. At first, Min-jun wanted to refuse. He did not want attention or fame, but Mrs. Kim convinced him otherwise. "Your story will inspire other people with disabilities," she said. "It will show them that they can make a difference too. It will remind everyone that small acts of kindness matter. You should share this story." The article appeared in a major Seoul newspaper 2 weeks later. It told the whole story, from the busy intersection to the scholarship and foundation. The headline read, Disabled boy helps blind billionaire's father, changes his own life. After the article published, something unexpected happened. The Hope Community Center was flooded with new donations. Other people wanted to help, inspired by Minjun's story. New volunteers signed up, including several people with disabilities who said Minjun had motivated them to serve their communities too. The Park family made good on their promise to continue supporting the center. Every month, new funds arrived to expand the meal program and improve facilities. By the end of the year, the Hope Community Center was serving over 200 meals daily and had opened a job training program to help homeless people find work. Mr. Park became one of the center's most beloved volunteers. Despite his blindness, he had a gift for connecting with people. He sat at tables with visitors, listening to their problems and offering advice based on his years of business experience. Several homeless visitors credited Mr. Park with helping them get back on their feet, giving them confidence and guidance to rebuild their lives. Minjun and Mr. Park developed a close friendship. Every week they spent hours talking about philosophy, business, life, and dreams. Mr. Park became a mentor to Minjun, teaching him things that no textbook could provide. In return, Minjun helped Mr. Park embrace his new life with purpose and meaning. The Kim Minjun Foundation officially launched 6 months after that fateful day at the intersection. The ceremony was held at a nice hotel, attended by business leaders, disability advocates, and community organizers. Minjun gave a short speech standing at the podium with his characteristic limp, using his good hand to hold his notes. "I am not a hero," he said simply. "I just helped someone who needed help. That is what we should all do for each other. Every person has value, regardless of what their body can or cannot do. Every person has something to contribute. The goal of this foundation is to help people with disabilities serve their communities, because service gives life meaning. When we help others, we help ourselves." The speech was short and simple, but it was honest and from the heart. The audience gave him a standing ovation. In his final year of high school, Minjun applied to several universities to study social work. He was accepted to all of them. He chose the most prestigious program, something that would have been financially impossible before. Thanks to the Park family's scholarship, he could focus entirely on his studies without worrying about money. His mother cut back to working just one job. She looked younger and happier than she had in years. She had energy to cook proper meals, to attend Minjun's school events, to simply be present in his life. The Hope Community Center continued to grow. Mrs. Kim hired additional staff and expanded the building. The kitchen was completely renovated with professional equipment. The scholarship fund helped 3 young volunteers, including Minjun, pursue university education in social service fields. Mr. Park's depression disappeared. He found new purpose in volunteering and in helping shape the foundation's direction. His son James often said that meeting Minjun had given him back his father. The entire Park family became advocates for disability rights and community service. On the first anniversary of their meeting, Minjun and Mr. Park returned to the intersection where everything had begun. They stood together on the sidewalk, listening to the chaos of traffic and crowds around them. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if you had walked past me that day?" Mr. Park asked. Minjun thought about it. "Sometimes. But I do not think I could have walked past you. My mother raised me to help people when I can. It is just who I am." "That is exactly why all of this happened," Mr. Park said. "Because of who you are. Not because of what happened after, but because of who you were before we ever met. You were already the kind of person who stopped to help. The kind of person who served others despite your own challenges. The kind of person who dreamed of making the world better. Everything else just gave you the tools to do it on a bigger scale." They stood together in comfortable silence. 2 people whose lives had been changed by one simple act of compassion. Around them, thousands of people rushed past, focused on their own busy lives. But Minjun knew that somewhere in that crowd, there were other opportunities to help. Other moments when kindness could make all the difference. Years later, after graduating from university, Minjun did return to help run the Hope Community Center alongside Mrs. Kim. The Kim Minjun Foundation grew to support hundreds of projects across South Korea. But Minjun never forgot the lesson of that autumn afternoon. It was not the scholarship that changed his life. It was not the foundation or the recognition or the opportunities. What changed his life was remembering that every person has value, that small acts of kindness create ripples far beyond what we can imagine, and that the most powerful thing any of us can do is simply help each other cross the street. Mr. Park continued volunteering until he passed away peacefully at age 83. At his funeral, Min-jun gave the eulogy, describing the blind man who had taught him that disability was not the end of purpose, but the beginning of a different kind of strength. Hundreds of people came to honor Mr. Park, including many from the Hope Community Center whose lives he had touched. And somewhere in Seoul, on a busy intersection in Gangnam, people still rushed past each other every day. But occasionally someone would stop. Someone would notice a person who needed help. Someone would offer their arm and walk slowly alongside a stranger, creating the kind of moment that changes everything. Those were Min-jun's favorite stories to hear, proof that compassion was contagious, that kindness multiplied, and that we all had the power to make the world better, one small act at a time.